Hi there, and welcome to episode 83 of the ADHD Adults podcast. Another awful, chaotic one-star episode of utter. I'm not using the word chaos again, Alex. You got that wrong. Another awful, chaotic one-star episode of utter shite for you, our beloved listener. Oh God, was that in the
Have we gone past 15 seconds?
We haven't. I fucked it again.
Oh, James.
Okay. I'm James Brown, I suppose, reading this from a ZX Spectrum because I ADHD'd the shit out of my new laptop. Thanks, Al. It's not like I felt enough distress at losing a brand new work laptop. You just added to it, and I'm joined by the man who refuses to get a newfangled ZX Spectrum because his abacus still works fine, Alex Connor, and Jet Set Willie herself, Mrs. ADHD. Hi,
Jet
Sam.
Set Willie.
It was a game years ago.
On the Spectrum.
Oh, hi.
Okay, you're not going to read the bit off the script. That's fine.
Oh, sorry. Oh, well, joke's on you because I haven't this week.
You did say hi.
But he did say hi to me.
It doesn't work if you don't.
Well.
Yeah, it doesn't work if we don't read it. Anyway, that'll be a mystery to people what Alex has put in the script. So, secondly, apparently, Alex, hi.
I had a Commodore 64, James. So joke is on you. This is a reminder. We started the podcast for educational reasons, but people in our imagination asked for more personal reflections and bonus content. So now we've time for an extra on. I'm less busy than I used to be because of these newfangled redundancies. And James has forgotten, or mislaid all of his hobbies and interests for the last 13 years. Although, James, I'm not sure just Twixes was an actual hobby. And Mrs. ADHD is also here for a Thursday on because she thinks the computer screen is just microwaving popcorn. Makes me laugh.
Oh, lovely. Anyway, this train toilet seat covered in 13 flavors of piss of a podcast is also a tragedy in 3 parts. We'll discuss how the week between podcasts has been really bad from our own perspective as people with ADHD and people involved in the adult ADHD community. We'll answer some questions from the community in part 2, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this week's theme, why we chose it, and how we feel about it. So, as usual, we'll start off with how was your week, Alex?
One day you're going to say, "Oh, really good, thanks." I honestly won't know what to do with myself. Mine was, I would as well. Mine was weird. As I talk about a little bit, I'm currently not drinking. I don't know how long it's been, but approximately 31 days, 11 hours and 15 minutes since my last drink. And I've been really, really good, really, really positive. It's like emotionally. And then on Friday, I woke up and I think a viral illness made me sad. And I don't know if anybody's experienced that, but everyone in the family had a bit of a cold except me, but I felt really like from a 9 to a 1, bereft. Friday could barely look. Everything felt dark, like a tunnel. Awful. Woke up Saturday morning just about kind of blinking through the day. Fell asleep almost on the loo at about 11 in the morning, and then literally fell asleep for several hours. Really odd. Woke up Sunday morning, James, back to perfectly fine, as if it had never happened. And that's just, I know I've asked you what you thought about that, whether it's, I've always been prone to a little bit of the old bipolar, but that's got to be a virus, hasn't it? What the hell?
Did you need a poo?
No. Regular as clockwork, Sam, once a month.
Yeah, we did have a chat about this. I mean, viruses do like nerves because they can hide from our immune system in them, and they can travel very quickly through the body along those long nerve axons. So, and we know that, for example, COVID can cause brain fog and can have an impact on the way in which our cognition works. But in terms of mood, I've not heard of anything. And listen, ADHD is associated with rapidly cycling moods. It's one of the reasons it's difficult to get a diagnosis of a bipolar disorder, because a lot of psychiatrists will say, no, that's your ADHD. So I don't know. I think personally that you had a bad couple of days, but I wasn't in your head, thank fuck, and therefore couldn't kind of see how bad the thoughts were.
Maybe you were just bored because everybody was ill. So you felt really low.
It was weird. Yeah. It's not very odd. What about you, Sam? How was your week?
Oh, well, I should probably let James go first because his week obviously impacted on mine, and he's had a really bad week.
Yeah.
The problem is, of course,
doesn't
that
give me
means we have to ask him.
Yeah.
Nobody
Yeah.
wants that.
How's
Go
yours
on then,
been,
James. Happy
I mean,
birthday. How was your week?
that doesn't add any extra pressure to me hearing that it impacted on your life, does it? It's not all about you. Remember the tattoo says. Yeah, as bad weeks go, it was a bad week. So I've talked about in the past the fact that I have been diagnosed with cyclothymia, which is in the DSM, the big book of psychiatric disorders, as one of the 4 forms of bipolar disorder. And that means that my moods can very quickly go from being normal or euthymic to trigger warning, klaxon, all the bad thoughts incessantly for 24 hours about what I want to do to myself. And equally, I can suddenly be hypomanic, just having so much energy and wanting to take risks and wanting to do ridiculous things. And again, I may have mentioned this before, I do have some triggers for particularly having a low period, and one is migraines. So ironically, after we did the headache episode a couple of weeks ago, I started getting migraines again. And I've had, I think, 4 in the last 7 days, something like that. And when I had a migraine on, I think it was Wednesday or something, it really wiped me out. And then I woke up the next day, and I was meant to go and see Mum, and I hadn't for a couple of days. So I already had a bit of guilt that through migraine and other reasons I hadn't. So I woke up on Thursday with a bit of a headache. And immediately the panic and fear that, is this going to be another migraine, was there. So I was already starting to feel a bit anxious and low. And then we're still dealing with Robert from Kidderminster's case. I'd printed off all his medical notes, jumped in the car to drive to see Mum, obviously hadn't picked up the notes. And it was just a switch in my head that instantly it was, you're the most useless person in the world. Everyone would be better off without you. You're terrible, you're awful. So I turned the car around, went home, messaged Mum, and that was the start of a few days of a bipolar or a cyclothymic low. It's really hard to describe it. Anyone that's had a depression or a mood disorder will know what it feels like when you're in that place. The thing that helps is that, and this is through experience and Mrs. ADHD helping, is I know it will pass. When I get into a low, I know from tracking my mood, which is something we talked about. Did we talk about it on a podcast? I can't remember. I track my mood using Bipolar UK's system of 0 to 10 mood, and I do that every day. And I know that the low periods last about 10 days, but the real pinch, the bad days, it's 2 or 3 out of those 10 days. So I knew it would pass. I'm not quite out of it. I'm still, I noticed yesterday, not in the best place. But then, Al, add on top of that, leaving your fucking work laptop on a train. So this was the following day when I'd already been thinking, can I go? This is a very important work meeting. Can I even go? I'm in such a bad place. I thought, I've got to grit my teeth and push through this. And then to lose my fucking brand new 2-day-old, just out of the box, work laptop, and my lovely Jabra headset, which is the one that you think is great, and the keyboard and mouse that came with it. To leave that on a train and then to get off at the train station, as I said on Monday's episode, and I just stood there and I didn't know what to do. I was just, this is the end of the world, I thought. Yeah. And I did, I'm not going to go into detail just in case it triggers somebody. I did, glance at opportunities for me to know, for massive trigger warning klaxon again, for me to no longer be around. I was in a really bad place. And then it turns out, I messaged the IT department of work. They went, right, it's fine, it's been locked. And when I got to the meeting and sat down with a group of people who largely have ADHD, I was told that the boss, if you like, had lost his laptop and phone that day. So I wasn't alone. And everyone just said, yeah, you're in a room full of ADHD people. There isn't a more accepting room of the fact you've lost your laptop in the world. And I just thought, that's brilliant. I just felt completely, that sense of being a failure just disappeared because I was around people that understood. Now, in my old job, if I'd gone to work and said, I've left my laptop on the train, I'd have got, oh, you fucking dickhead. How did you do that? Well, IT are going to be mad. It would have been amplified because people at my ex-employer didn't understand ADHD.
You must be more careful or whatever. It's
yeah, exactly.
When you texted me, I thought and said, I think, yeah, that's going to happen again. That will happen to me too. It just will.
And do you know what the big driver of it was? I It's about routine.
Yeah.
We've talked about routine and habit being really important. I always, up until this week, always just use one laptop rucksack, and I'll have my MacBook in there and my work laptop if needed. But because I've got a separate kind of laptop briefcase, I just thought, well, I'll put my work stuff in that one, not in the bag I normally put it in, and therefore clever. And therefore, I obviously grabbed the rucksack and my coat as I got off the second train, and not the fucking briefcase, which was up on the ledge, and you couldn't see it because it was very flat. So yeah,
it really
what a
hurts.
fucking week.
Friend of the show, Maria, says that they do what they call the idiot check when they leave any event, where you do the idiot check and everyone looks everywhere to see what you've lost. I mean, I've done that and left things, but it helps me a bit. That's brutal.
Yeah. Sam, you can follow on from that by adding some extra guilt to me by saying how I ruined your week by being mentally ill.
Oh.
I had a great week. No, obviously I'm going to be sad when James is sad. Obviously it's going to be difficult when because I just want him to be better. Maybe not for you, Al. Yeah, so I have struggled a bit. It's been a bit of a hard week, obviously. Yeah, so we had to not do things that we were going to do. But I'd rather that James was well and safe with me than us doing those things. So it's just one of those things, isn't it? But I got back into making ear cuffs again. Somebody ordered one, and I was like, oh God, I've got to make one. And then once I started, I fucking loved it. I made loads of them. So yeah, that was good.
It's good how you re-engage with the task, because often that's a problem for you and many people with ADHD. Is you hyper focus on a new activity or hobby, brilliant, and then the second you stop, you'll never pick it up again. And I thought, this is it; she'll never do that again. But clearly, you do find it rewarding, and you ploughed into it for days.
Yeah, well, I'd broken down a load of, because I make it from old jewelry. I get, because I like to recycle. I'm a bit of a. Anyway, yeah, so I'd broken down loads of jewelry, and it got me really excited because I could see what I could make from each one. So yeah, I loved it.
Well, that's good, positive. I'm definitely sure that if James wasn't here, you would answer that question slightly differently. Let's let him off right then. As always, last question: what stupid thing have you been doing instead of what you were supposed to be doing this week? Anything, Sam? I mean,
a few, always a few, isn't it?
There's always a few, yeah.
Yeah, we were having people to visit us this weekend, which didn't happen, but they still booked a hotel to come and see us, and we were all going to play ghetto golf together. I think it's called Golfang now. Anyway, that doesn't matter. So I booked the golf for the wrong date, realised when I sent them the receipt. And they were like, oh, I'll try and change the hotel for another night then. And I was like, no, don't worry. I'll just change the golf. So changed the golf. So didn't move their hotel, and then couldn't because it was too late. And obviously I didn't change the golf. And so we missed it. And I didn't realise until the Saturday that I'd actually booked it for the Friday night. So I was like, oh, yeah, so you've booked a hotel to come see us and you're not seeing us. And I've booked golf for the wrong night. So that's fun. Anyway, they were really good. But also, it's my mum's birthday soon. I thought I'd ordered 2 cakes online, and I was really stressed because I could see that 2 payments had gone through for cakes. And then I thought, I kind of worked out that, I haven't ordered 2. I've just ordered 1, but I've ordered the wrong one. So then emailed them to say, listen, I've ordered a cake, but I've ordered the wrong one. Could I have this other one instead? And they were like, can we have your order number? And I realised I hadn't had a confirmation email. So I hadn't ordered either of them. I must have ordered them both, but not pressed confirm at the end. So like a payment on the account had gone out, but I hadn't actually ordered the cake. So that was fine in the end. I also remember the lovely pilot from Fly B. I was going to write a letter in and say how wonderful he was.
Yes.
Well, they've gone into administration now. So it's too late. So fuck that one up.
And you know what the last straw was for that company? It was Having
Do
to
you know
run a
what? And
flight
I did
for
think-
4 people.
I did think that. I mean, that must have hurt them financially. So yeah. Anyway, I also, because I'm back into my ear cuffs again, tried soldering one of them and just got so distracted and into the soldering, I didn't realize that I was burning through again the whole plastic base of the handy hands with my soldering iron until I started realizing there was smoke and stuff. So yeah,
I'm
that's
just going to leave handy hands right there. Doesn't need any further explanation.
Yeah, that's me. How about
about
you,
you?
James?
Yeah, James. What about you?
What have I been doing? What ADHD thing have I been doing? I've been massively overwhelmed, which is obviously a common ADHD thing. It's something we've been asked to do an episode on ADHD overwhelm because of the whole being driven by a motive, because of the whole I can't stop, and I don't really have hobbies apart from Twixes. Was it Twixes you said? I can't remember now. Anyway. Yeah, complete overwhelm to the point that it stopped me doing some things, because when you've got, WhatsApp messages, Twitter DMs, your personal email account, the charity email account, although Sam handles most of them, obviously, apart from the media ones, charity Instagram, personal Instagram, LinkedIn messages, etc., etc., etc. I just got to the point where I couldn't check any of them because it was just too much. So that meant that I then got behind on checking messages, and then it becomes even more overwhelming. And if you mix that in with the state of mind I was in, which was you're a shit human, you're useless, everyone will be better off without you, that self-loathing just became worse because I was not engaging with tasks that normally I just about managed to keep up with. Yeah, and that's that. About you, Al?
It's really tough as well, because when you texted me, James, to say you were feeling like this, I was like, it was like a slap in the face, because if you don't work with James, you wouldn't know this, but he kind of breezed into a meeting I was in with some important people. He was there for like 20 minutes. He gave 2 ideas where everyone went, perfect, we'll just do that then, because they were really good ideas. And then he fucked off to another meeting. And everyone's like, well, that's wonderful. I hope you can do everything because it's perfect. And he texted me going, well, I'm a useless human being. And it's so, the subjective and the objective are opposites. And I like immediately, I'm like, that's wrong, because normally you've got some level of awareness, but that it was like weird. You were saying like objectively crazy stuff, as you well know. And I was really worried about it. So if I could slap you, I would, but I can't.
I was really worried about it. So you wanted to slap him? That was
absolutely always do. I'm going to tell you. I need to tell you something about my ADHD thing this week, which is, the drinks thing. I like cold drinks. So I put bottles of drink in the cold, and then my wife takes them out and leaves them on the tables. And you know how I asked you two for advice because I was really furious about it. And it was like an hour and a half ago.
Yeah.
And so I texted my wife saying, look, we really need to sort this out. And she replied, oh, I'm really sorry, I'll try harder. So I don't care about that anymore.
Yeah.
It's of no interest or consequence to me. I said something to someone I love more than life itself, critical, because I had an emotional dysregulation about it, and I don't care now. I hate that about ADHD. I hate it.
I kind of like it.
Oh God,
I'm over it so quickly.
Oh no, I love that bit. I don't like the fact that every bone in my body is screaming, this needs airing, and they're being unreasonable, and you need to tell them, so you do, and then you're like, I don't care about that.
I know.
Oh,
I think it's that part of it's that justice sensitivity, isn't it? It's like, this isn't right.
Yes.
They shouldn't do this. They should think more of me, and then you instantly are not bothered about it. Oh, I don't mind. Leave them out.
Of my
I don't need cold drinks.
Oh my God. I don't like to say Sam's good at anything, but yeah, really, Sam's coaching and like that sort of empathy. She has too much empathy. That's exactly it. Does she not care about me at all? Of course she does. She forgot to put the bottle back in the fridge, Al. The thing you now don't give a shit about. I hate ADHD. I'm just glad we were the hunters of a long
Oh yeah, we were the advantage.
Yeah,
definitely. Right. Okay, we'll take a break and we'll come back in part 2 to answer some questions from the ADHD community. See you in part 2.
right, see you in a bit.
Alex, hi.
Aight. What's up? Hello, Governor.
Welcome back to the ADHD Adults podcast, episode 83. Unbelievably. We are, as always, in part 2 on this extra special, very first Thursday edition that's released today, taking questions from the ADHD community from all over Twitter, Instagram, MySpace, and the ZX8 Spectrum forums. Mainly the Discord, though, the ADHD Adults. Please come and join in. Right then, first question we've got is from the Mendes on Discord. I'm feeling a bit vilified by this article sent to me in the Daily Mail. I mean, that'll be why. Granted, it is the worst news source in existence. News, inverted commas. But basically, I want to say, fuck off, you Tory. And then there's a lot of stars. I don't know what they mean. What are your thoughts on this stance that ADHD is now overdiagnosed? I would expect, like anything, the greater the awareness, then the more likely people will seek diagnosis. The fact that the UK didn't recognise ADHD in adults until 2008, really, plus a couple of years off routine where anyone masking for their entire existence pulls their masks off, and that's more likely to be an explanation. What do you think? Brilliant one. Sam, what are your thoughts on, do you think ADHD is being overdiagnosed? And what's your thoughts on newspapers like the Daily Fail talking about it?
Well, obviously, I fucking hate the Daily Mail.
Because it's shit.
Yeah. And right wing and all the things. But yeah, it's not overdiagnosed, is it? It's underdiagnosed massively.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, objectively, yes.
Yeah, so that's it.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, agree. Well, ADHD is now a story. The more celebrities, influencers announce that they've got it, the more journalists start to look into it. And I've spoken to a couple of journalists through my day job about this. One of whom had ADHD and was writing kind of a positive story. And I don't know if it's been commissioned because it's not gone in print yet. But remember what journalists do is they have to, now newspapers in print are pretty much dead, they have to drive clicks. So the title of the article, is ADHD being overdiagnosed. If you read the article, they have a few psychiatrists, psychologists, and other experts speaking. And they talk about these things. So one of them says at least 80%, probably more, of adults with ADHD are undiagnosed. And I think a lot of this is journalists trying to put a spin on something so it will get clicks. It's obvious. Yeah, it's obvious that diagnostic assessments of ADHD have massively increased. I read 400% in the last 2 years somewhere. But that's not because people are jumping on this trendy bandwagon. It's because people are finally realizing that ADHD is a thing in adults and that they might have it. This is one of the reasons that some elements of the NHS were not prepared for this, because they weren't ever assessing it. They didn't have a community team for assessing ADHD. They didn't have psychiatrists with expertise sitting waiting in mental health hospitals or clinics. Well, there's going to be someone with ADHD turning up soon. It just wasn't a thing. So the NHS wasn't geared up for it. And now all of a sudden people are realizing, because of the effects of lockdown and because of people talking about it, that they have these issues and it makes sense to go for an assessment. So it's just clickbait bollocks.
It's such a weird one. I mean, you look at the prescription numbers and you look at the likelihood of ADHD, it's about 90% of people who would get diagnosed aren't, or certainly aren't taking any medication that would work. What I don't understand is these amazing journalists, and I've worked with them and I know them like you do, James, amazing journalists having to work for these organizations funded by like nefarious people. And their job now, these amazing journalists, is all they're actually allowed to do is trigger the base instincts, people's dog whistle, knee-jerk, lack of compassion and hatred, like saying things to make them feel hatred and lack of compassion. I don't know how we've got there. It makes me very, very sad. But yes, it's a load of bollocks. We probably shouldn't get into this, should we? It makes me angry.
Okay. I like that, Alex, getting angry. Question 2 is, hang on, I'm going to burp.
Please don't burp. Thinks he's Chris
Well,
Moyles.
I didn't have time. I've done it 4 times so far in this recording, but I've managed to mute, but I couldn't get to the mute button in time. It was an urgent burp, Alex. It was an emergency burp. Then. Thank you. Hi all, long-time listener, first-time caller. I've been rationing your podcast since my diagnosis last summer, so I wouldn't run out too fast. But now I'm finally caught up, and it felt time to message and thank all three of you for the impact you've had. Like all your listeners, I feel less alone, understand more about the way my brain works, and feel that if I'm a questionable friend/employee with memory of a fish and the attention span the width of a cake fork, at least I'm not the only one. Now I'm caught up. I wanted to ask a question in the hopes it would get out after Robert from Kidderminster's letter, in brackets, sending continued support with a big heart. Last week I bought, this is the question now. Last week I bought some Satsumas.
That could be just that you got distracted and that's a new sentence altogether.
Exactly. It was a big bag of Satsumas, so I thought I have to make sure I eat them all before they go off. For some reason, I now have a giant mental block about the Satsumas, and every time I think of them, I almost don't want one because it feels like a task. Is this an ADHD thing? It feels like one. Or did I just buy too many Satsumas? And that's Will from Instagram. Alex, do you want to go first?
It's
I want
brilliant. It's brilliant.
Sam, do you
on,
want to
Sam,
go first?
Yeah.
Definitely an ADHD thing. First of all, you've made it sound to your own mind like it's like a task, like I've got to eat all of these Satsumas. So your brain's going, well, I don't want to do that. And secondly, I don't know if you're like me, but I'll eat something every day because I fucking love it until all of a sudden halfway through eating it, I fucking hate it and I never want to eat it again. It's like my brain just goes, I don't like those anymore. Find something else. And maybe that's happened too. What about you, Al?
You don't. Just before we go to Al, you don't often tell me that you've gone off these things until 3 weeks after I've been buying them in the weekly shop, and they start building up, and then you say, "Oh yeah, I don't eat those anymore."
That's because I keep forgetting to tell you, and then I daren't tell you because I know that if you come back from shopping and I go, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, I hate these," you'll go mental at me. So I think I'll wait until next time you go shopping. But then obviously I forget again. So you come back home and I think I can't tell him now. He'll go mental. I'll wait until he goes shopping next time. And on and on and on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah, I'm glad you stopped at that point, actually. I think she'd invited you to comment, Alex, so crack on.
So we shouldn't ever use stereotypes, as you well know. I just want to point out, Sam, that your I can't ever eat this again thing. You have the other diagnosis that often goes hand in hand with ADHD. And it's possible that it's that one in this case, not what
I've actually
Will's
made
asking.
a GP appointment on Thursday to speak to them about that.
Well done. I couldn't remember if we've openly talked about it on this. I think we have.
Might have. We think. Well, if we haven't, we can talk about it.
I think it's obvious.
There as well, yeah. So ADHD and autistic spectrum condition stroke disorder go hand in hand often, and I think some of those elements are more on the autistic side. Right. I, for example, don't tend to do that. I do a little bit with some foods, but I wouldn't say more than non-ADHD people.
Okay.
What I would say is that some elements of it are human. Eating is psychological in humans. So for example, we wouldn't report our food that we've cooked ourselves as nice as food somebody else has cooked for us, because the anticipation of eating it while we're cooking reduces our sensation of pleasure psychologically. It's just a fact. So one of the reasons we go out for dinner, it's nice to be cooked for.
Is it the same with sex? So the anticipation of having sex with somebody you're with means the reward isn't as good as the anticipation of sex with somebody else. And Mrs. ADHD's just confirmed that, yeah.
I wouldn't know. Right. And having said that, there's also an element of that. As soon as a task feels a lot and we feel forced to do something, there's an element of that oppositional sense that is more common in ADHD. And I think that that could be the oppositional side is like, well, I don't want fucking Satsumas. Yeah. I think that's very, very likely. What about you, Jim Bob Jim?
All I would say is everything is a task. Everything is a task. And one of the things we famously struggle with is engaging with tasks. So it might not be that it's specifically Satsumas or that you bought a big bag, but sometimes we just can't engage with tasks. And that's the thing we often don't. That's the thing we often don't. That is the thing we often don't consider, that everything from doing the shopping to painting the house to, Christ, I was going to say fingering your wife, but that would have been really bad.
You did that a chore for you.
No,
did
it's
say
just a
it.
task. Did I? Okay. Anyway, it's just a task. They're all tasks. These things are tasks, aren't they? And therefore, sometimes you can't engage with those tasks. Do you think
I
is that a
appreciate the
new low? Is it?
sentiment. I don't think
Yeah.
it should be your wedding vows, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. So it's completely understandable that Will, that you can't engage with a task, satsumas or otherwise.
Anyway, to the bride and groom.
Oh, good. Quickly moving on. Sam, do you want to read question 3 out?
Yeah, I'd like to. This is from JJJ on Discord. You know, on the pod, the guys say there might be different causes of ADHD or different types of ADHD, like most are genetic, etc. But trauma or head injury, etc., could cause something that looks like ADHD. Well, if that's the case, would ADHD meds still work in those cases? Or is the underlying issue in the brain different? James?
Oh, my.
Oh,
Great
thanks for
question.
that.
Oh,
Thanks for that.
Alex?
It's no, it's a good question. So we know that 20% of people with ADHD do not respond to the currently available medication. About 30% don't respond to the stimulants, and therefore some of them respond to atomoxetine, the non-stimulant medication. So it's a really good question, because we don't yet have that gold standard brain scan that everybody with ADHD can have that shows that their brain is different in a way that's consistent with ADHD. It's difficult to tell. I know Alex has his hypothesis that in the future there will be ADHD subtypes where you can tell, maybe what the cause is, or that it's associated with different things. But I think it's really hard to tell. Alex?
I think it's something we really need to say out loud here, which is no ADHD is only genetic. It's highly unlikely that ever happens.
It does.
How as in diagnosably
read
ADHD.
Read that. The 208 evidence-based or 282 evidence-based
Yeah.
statements. It actually says in there are very, very rarely single gene defects that cause ADHD.
Oh, okay.
Very, very rarely.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, my bad. You are 100% correct, James, as always. Not almost no ADHD is entirely genetic. There could be one or two that are like a proper accidental mutation. And I would say there is a very small subtype of ADHD. I think there are some ADHDs that are not genetic at all, as in significant trauma or bad luck. Could be anything. Could have eaten the wrong fungus as a baby. Do babies eat fungus? Don't know. I think some ADHD, I think probably most, that's a bit not science tax on. Most ADHD is that you have the genetic disposition for it, as James always says, like you've got the firewood in your genes ready to be lit. And it's probably lit by most normal stimulus in life of just living, normal living, and people having expectations of you, and not trauma per se, but the experience of being sensitive. And I know I'm really couching my words here because I don't want to say the wrong thing, but that's why I think there'll be subtypes. The question of whether all of them, whether it's true, first of all, if we identify that as true, then what we have to do is clinical trials to see if these subgroups respond in the same way to treatment. And if they do, then the answer to your question is yes, fine, use the same treatment for all. It's more likely, however, that the treatment will be subtly different, such as a different type of therapy to go with the stimulant medication, rather than those ones don't respond to stimulants and those ones do. That would be my guess.
So you don't know then?
I do know, yeah, I know 100%, and I've just clearly explained it.
Really?
Or haven't? No, not at all.
No.
No one knows. Right, let's take a break from amazing questions. Our questions are getting ridiculously intelligent. They make us look stupid. In part 3, we're going to have thoughts on this week's theme, which is hunter-gatherer theory, hypothesis, and some other stuff. See you in a bit.
Brilliant. See you in a bit.
Stonk trumpet.
Welcome back to episode 83 of the ADHD Adults podcast, the week in ADHD 14. I don't know what that means. This is part 3, where we talk about our personal reflections on the theme. James, what made you choose the last idea for a theme?
This is why just using the ticker, which was wrong for the first part of this episode, if you're watching on YouTube, isn't the best way. 14 means it's the 14th Thursday episode that we've done.
Special.
Yeah, said that.
14.
Said that.
You didn't. You just said I don't know what 14 is.
Oh, yeah.
So what made us choose this theme? That person asking me on Twitter, and a couple of people at the talks that I do, Alex,
Your thoughts.
made me want to understand it, because I have talked about that before with people in various settings about that idea that people who were distractible may have been advantageous, but now I understand it better as Alex has explained it, that traits would have been beneficial. Again, that risk-taking impulsivity, at a kind of lower level, those traits would have been beneficial. But it was largely my RSD. So when somebody asked me that question on Twitter, and because I've had issues on tickers, as we've said, with somebody saying that saying that that's not a gene, Down syndrome is a gene, and the long conversation that ensued after that, my RSD was like, I've got to look into this, I've got to research this, because maybe I've said the wrong thing. And that made me think, well, I think this would be a good episode. So that's what made me choose or influence the theme. What about you, Alex?
It's an interesting one, because I'd already written something, but I hadn't put it on a shared document because I wasn't happy with it. And you'd written it as well. So I think we just, at the same time, I essentially get cross on the internet when people, especially people with massive followings or who've got a book to sell, have this, for every complex question, there is an answer that's clear, simple, and wrong. And they provide you that. And they think that me saying, well, I don't think that's entirely true. They're saying it isn't ever that in anyone. And they really wanted an episode where we make it clear that everything's a bit of everything. And it's, possible, not possible. And that's really true in ADHD. Sam, why did you choose Come Together with the Hypothesis?
You want me to say this again?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
As usual. I have no editorial rights in this podcast and don't contribute to it in any way. So I didn't choose the theme.
We are discussing, aren't we, on the group, the edit chat, that you write one and we read out everything you write.
Imagine.
Oh, I'm not joking at all.
Next bit's in green, Sam.
Oh, James, it's
sorry.
ruining my fun. I wanted a real pause while we'd wait for it.
I was doing other stuff. Was there any thought or tip from the theme that you forgot to say, Alex?
I love it how you clearly read it out. No, not really. What I will say is that
James?
I didn't steal. I mean, I 100% did steal this. I didn't, when you've met one person with ADHD, you've met one person with ADHD. I definitely didn't steal that. The first person I've heard say that, but I 100% stole it from a number of people, including a neurodiversity conference I was at not long ago, where it's commonly said about autistic people. So autistic people say it about themselves, I mean. When you met one autistic person, you met one autistic person. But the wild variation in the ADHD brain means we shouldn't really say the ADHD brain, as I also got told off for correctly this week. So not really about hunter-gatherer, but about just mea culpa, where I stole that from. Everything's stolen, James. What about you, I guess we should ask?
So that related in no way to the theme at all, then? In no way.
We're just saying things that come into our minds.
Okay, brilliant. What about me? I mentioned about the book thing, and I suppose I wanted to talk about that a bit more. It is many people get their information. Particularly, I did this. Got diagnosed with ADHD and bought 2 books and didn't open either of them because I just couldn't. And weirdly, I think, well, maybe not weirdly, because of my history as a scientist and my ability as a trained scientist to critically assess studies. So you can look at a study and straight away say, well, that wasn't pre-registered. They didn't do a power calculation. There were only 20 people. That's bad evidence. And compare it to other papers. I learned about ADHD from the scientific literature. And again, I think it's really important that, scientists effectively don't sell their papers. They write papers to further their career, but people sell books to make money. That's why people sell books. They wouldn't be doing it otherwise. And therefore, just be wary again that when you're buying a book, somebody's written that, it might be because they do want to help the population. They think they've got, it's something great to sell. But remember again that people are doing it to try and make money, and therefore it's read it, but don't. There's a thing that people do, not everybody, and not just people with ADHD, and that is, if you read something, it must be true. Whether it's in a newspaper or in a book, and I know Sam, Mrs. ADHD, is very much like this, that if something is written down or on a television, then it's got to be true, because you can't lie, can you? And Alex is pulling faces at Sam, and therefore I think it's really important to try and approach information in a critical way, and that means don't just accept everything you read, even stuff that we do. Don't just accept it. Think about it and look it up. Yes, Al.
Absolutely right. No, you don't bring attention to the hand. Was that from the theme of Hunter or Gatherer, that comment? Just out of interest.
About both, because I said that if you remember in the episode on Hunter Gathering, we said that there was a famous book which lots of people had read. And then if you remember in my personal reflections in Monday's episode, I talked about how books are often opinions, so ones which cite evidence are useful. So yeah, it is related to the theme, you massive cock.
I was going to also defend Sam that you were really rude about her believing what she read in a book. And then I remember the last time we were in a car and she told me, she was reading all about golems or some shit. Like it was absolutely
golems. Yeah, no, it was fascinating. I learned all about them.
Amazing.
And I've just read one about the Mer recently. I'll tell you about that when I next see you.
Sam, do you have any thoughts or tips about the theme? Well, have we already done Sam? I can't remember.
No, you haven't done me. No.
Ding.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know really. I thought of one more thing I forgot. I'm not going to say it now, though.
Go on.
You may as well. It's dead space otherwise.
I know, yeah. Well, you were saying that you forgot to take the notes over to your mum's, and then I went over to take the notes over to your mum's and got there, and I hadn't taken them either.
Yeah. So we double ADHD'd that, didn't we?
Double ADHD'd that, and probably more stuff. I don't know. But yeah, Lord of the Rings is real.
Lord of the Rings is real. That is the take home from this Hunter. Yeah.
What a clever man.
Hominids lived in existence. Lord of the Rings was real. Same. Right. That was episode 83 of the ADHD Adults podcast. And it was the first ever 14th Thursday extra edition of the ADHD podcast, probably. After Monday's episode on ADHD and the hunter-gatherer hypothesis. If you like this nonsense, what the hell, and you want to get involved, please contact us on the socials, the ADHD Adults, and also especially the lovely Discord, which definitely doesn't have about 300 messages from me, and then I spent 2 weeks avoiding them because I'm frightened of RSD. Have a lovely week. Goodbye.
Bye.
See ya.